Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 3 of Let's Talk Elephants. This season, we will be covering topics we have not touched on before, and I'm really looking forward to switching it up a little bit. One of those topics that we haven't discussed before is regarding the state of our environment and the damage that humans have done to it in such a short amount of time. That's one of the reasons why I'm so excited about my first sponsor for the show, not just because it's my first sponsor, but also because they're a company that is concerned with the environment, so our values just happen to align. Ana Luisa, spelled Analuisa, is a carbon neutral jewelry company that sells very aesthetic, very cute, dainty pieces. I'm super picky about my jewelry, and I can say that I've tested their pieces out for over a month now and can safely say that they meet my standards. Between working outside in the summertime and working out multiple times a week, I would say I'm sweating pretty frequently, and their pieces haven't turned my skin green or irritated it in any way the way some other jewelry does. So that's the biggest thing for me since I personally have sensitive skin. They're also super fair priced with their pieces starting at $39. And on top of that, you can use my discount code ELEPHANTS for 10% off anything you purchase. They release new jewelry collections every Friday, so there's always something new to look through. So again, if you guys see something you like, you can use my discount code ELEPHANTS to get 10% off all products at shop.analuisa.com/elephants. That link will take you straight to their website where you'll see their selection of rings, earrings, necklaces, bracelets, all that good stuff. And it's made from a variety of materials such as sterling silver, stainless steel, brass, and even solid gold. And boys, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, you have a sister, mom, girlfriend, wife, daughter that does. So buy them something nice. Again, for everyone, you can visit shop.analuisa.com/elephants and use my code ELEPHANTS for 10% off. Thank you. And now on to the reason why we're here. My guest today is Russell Wright, and he has graciously agreed to come on the show and discuss a very turbulent relationship that he was in and his corresponding decision to engage in celibacy for 26 months. Now, what makes this especially unique, besides the fact that people rarely engage in celibacy nowadays at all, is that he did it successfully for 26 months and that he works both in a city and an industry where sex and sexuality and things of a sexual nature are used as a form of marketing or sales. Russell is a VIP host at a beach club and nightclub in Las Vegas, Nevada, so it's even more interesting to me that he chose to be celibate in these types of environment. So Russell, I'm going to hand it over to you. So could you please briefly introduce yourself and then start by sharing with me what influenced your decision to engage in celibacy?
Absolutely. So, like Destiny said, my name is Russell Wright, and I work in nightlife here in Las Vegas. And as she said, I did embark on a journey of celibacy for 26 months. And the reason for me doing that was just because I realized as a man, most of my, I guess, failures came behind women or chasing women. And I guess at the time, I had just had a kid in my last failed relationship, and that was the final straw, so to speak, as to like what made my decision. And I just knew like something had to change because having that child basically forced the child to grow up in a single parent household, and that was one of my biggest fears growing up, even as a child myself. So once that happened, that was, I guess, the thing that basically shocked me into getting my life in order. So from there, I would say about September of 2019, I made a decision to myself that, you know what, I need to just basically subtract myself from sex altogether. And that's exactly what I did. It was hard at first, but with each passing day, with every passing month, I got more clarity, and I was able to reflect on my life and the things that I did wrong. So make no mistake that I'm not coming here as a victim of anything. This is the flaws that I had to find within myself. It's so easy for me to point fingers at someone else like, oh, this girl did this to me or that person did that to me. make no mistake, I'm not coming on here saying that I'm a victim in any way. So, yeah, that in a nutshell, that's the reason I started my journey, and I'm sure we'll dissect it as we go further and further in. So.
So one thing that was interesting to me that you mentioned as you were saying that is that your son, right?
Absolutely, yes,
Your son growing up in a single parent household is one of your biggest fears. Why is that?
Well, it's one of my biggest fears because personally, I believe that a child raised in a single parent home isn't conducive of an adult that will be successful. Granted, there's a lot of children that were able to be successful growing up in single parent households. However, the statistics state that children brought up in two parent households are more successful. They tend to be less prone to go to jail. They tend to not become alcoholics. The list goes on. But that's not necessarily the reason that I wanted my child to grow up in a two-parent home. Is because I just felt that I'll be a great parent and we should be doing this together, you know? And that just really crushed me at the time, at least. I've come to accept it. But at the time, it definitely devastated me to the point where I did choose celibacy. And I had to look myself in the mirror and understand that, like, not necessarily I was a problem, but something has to change. So.
Okay. Is his mom still in the picture? Like, do you co-parent with her, or is she completely out of the picture in raising him?
No, we co-parent, and I'm sure that's a different topic in itself. But yeah, we definitely co-parent.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure, like, what statistics you were quoting or what exactly, I guess, what you mean by single parent household versus two parent household. So that's something that, we'd have to verify and look into. But do you remember if the data you were looking at was, stating that if they have to be in the same household, or is it okay for you guys,
Well,
because it's not like she's completely out of the
just
picture.
just for the camera, all right. The statistics are verified, but it's actually children raised in single mother households are more prone to do the things that I mentioned, and the list goes on. So nothing against single mothers at all. There's
Right.
some great single mothers out there. All I'm just saying is that's unfortunately the environment that my son will have to be on. So.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for being candid about that.
Yeah,
It's difficult.
yeah.
And no shame to, like,
Yeah.
single parents or,
Yeah.
people co-parenting. I grew up, my parents divorced when I was 2 or 3. So I grew up, I mean, my mom remarried when I was like 8 or 9. And then I lived, back and forth between my mom and my stepdad and then my dad. But technically, I grew up in single parent homes. And it was hard. Like, I'll say that. I mean, I obviously feel like I turned out okay, but as a child, growing up with divorced parents, it's a lot on us because it's packing a bag. It's if you forget something, then you have to tell mom or dad, like, hey, I left this at mom's house or I left this at dad's house. And then they get upset because they have to drive all the way back over. Like, I went to a private Catholic school where we had to wear uniforms. So there's a specific thing that you have to wear every single day. And if you forget a piece of that, you get written up, you get in trouble at school. So, it was a lot on us. So I understand where you're coming from. It's not that, they can't turn out okay in single parent homes. It's just, it is an added stressor. But it's really common nowadays, like divorce. I'd have to look up the stats. I wonder if I could find it on the computer. But like right now, I think the divorce rate is like over 50%. So it's becoming more of a norm. I don't want to say like unfortunately because there's so much that goes into a divorce or a separation that makes it the right thing for people given their circumstances. Like some classes that I took when I was in school show that if you are in a toxic relationship with your partner, so like if you guys are fighting a lot, if it's abusive in any way, lots of negative energy around the child, that it's actually better for you guys to separate. So what you're talking about is true. Like the statistics that I read showed that it's better for children to grow up in a dual parent household if the relationship is healthy. You know what I mean? But you could probably find some peace in knowing that given your particular circumstance with whoever you were with at that time, that your child's mom, you guys probably would have had a very difficult relationship had you chose to stay together. So it's given what has happened, this is probably better for him. You know what I mean? So I'll give you guys kudos for doing what is best for him. Next, I wanted to ask you about, because we're talking about how, you know, you kind of had this perspective of relationships before, you know, engaging in this one. Did this experience, you know, whether we're talking about being celibate or, you know, that experience within that relationship, did it change your perspective on relationships for better or for worse?
For the better, absolutely. I know you're big on this, but it opened my third eye, so to speak. So I can almost, I don't know, see red flags coming from a mile away. Like it gave me a true perspective. Whereas, especially as men, we're so visual. Like, oh, this girl has big breasts and a big butt. Like, forget what else what comes along with it. So now I just see things from a different perspective. Like, so instead of thinking with the wrong head, I'm thinking with the right head. So that's one of the biggest factors it gave me for it to be coming from like when you asked me if it was for the better, like it was absolutely for the better because it gave me strength. It allowed me to just find a different meaning of life when it all revolved around like chasing women or how many women I could sleep with or
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I view it.
Sure.
So now it's like it's not even a priority to me. Like I can go a weekend and not have to hook up with a girl, and whereas before, like, oh dang, like who am I gonna hook up with this weekend? So
Was it like so would you say that like sex was a really big driving factor for you in choosing like the women that you were intimate with? Like that was one of the main things you thought about was like the physical aspect of things?
yes, and I was a romantic. Like I really did want to spend my life with someone. So yeah, physically and like yeah, it's not just women that have that Disney, this fairy tale thing wanting to spend the rest of their life with someone. Men think that way too. Like as much as they want to deny it, like yeah, guys want to find that one girl too. It's just in the society we're in today, like it's just not as common. So
It's funny that you mentioned that because I did an episode on specifically this topic about men and women in relationships, and there's this misconception, you know, not that you're in the wrong for saying that, but it's just kind of like a socially accepted notion about women, is that women want relationships more than men, or women get attached more easily, or women are more emotional, and all the research backs that none of that is true, right? Like as humans, we want connection. As human beings, we want to find somebody to pair with. It's in our biological wiring, our biological instinct to pair with people. It's just that sexually, this is what the research shows, is that sexually women are more aroused when they're in intimate relationships, which is a part of the reason, a part of their drive to find somebody that they have an emotional connection with. It doesn't mean that they're any more likely to get attached after sex. It just means that intimate relationship is something that drives women's sexual arousal. Men, it's more physical. It's more what's on the outside. Women, it's more like their connection with that person. But both are driven by sex. It's just, this misconception that we want a relationship any more than men do. So I'm glad that you've, kind of acknowledged that in your own life.
absolutely.
Did you share with anyone that you were doing this, like you were engaging in celibacy either before, during, or after? I mean, obviously after, because...
Well, yeah, at first, just very few people knew. And then, like, once I got towards the end, well, I mean, I actually still wanted to keep the streak alive, but around, like, September or maybe June of 2021, in between those months, some of the guys I worked with, they knew I was doing it, and they were all, like, amazed, like, oh, my God. Like, so that's who knew. I think my dad knew, but he was anti it, so it was funny.
Okay.
So,
That's funny.
yeah.
Because I'm going to ask you about who was supportive and who was not. Did the woman that kind of sparked this for you, did she know that you were doing this, or does she know now?
I don't know if she knew. I don't know if she knew, and I don't even think she would have believed me even if she did know. So, I mean, yeah, I know she made passes at me. So,
Why would she not have believed you? Like, because you were a very sexual being, and she wouldn't consider you being celibate, or what?
not that. I think she wouldn't believe it just because he was like, all right, well, I'm not sleeping with you, so who are you sleeping with, type of thing. Like, and I don't know. She knew how it was or what I was becoming into because around that time I was starting to be more, like straight arrow type of thing. So
So was it kind of like she felt like she had you and no one else did, and that's why it wouldn't have been like something that she believed, or
she probably knew how I felt about her, like, cause yeah, I
because
was.
you really cared about her,
Which I did. Yeah,
yeah.
I won't, front. So I definitely did care about her, and she was doing her anyway. So
Yeah.
yeah. So that's how I looked at that situation.
Okay. So you said that your dad wasn't supportive. Why was he not supportive of you doing this?
No, he was anti it. He basically just said like I need to. The irony is he quoted the Bible. I don't even know if it's has any true correlation, but he's like, man and women are meant to be, and like you shouldn't basically withhold myself from being with a woman. Like that's how
That's
he basically.
really
Yeah, my
wow.
dad is almost 80 years old, mind you. So
Wow.
yeah.
Well, it's interesting to me because, like, I have told you in the past that I grew up Catholic. So, usually the narrative there regarding, because you were being celibate. So, I guess this is an important distinction to make. When you say celibate, were you still, like, entertaining women emotionally and you just weren't engaging with them physically, or were you just kind of separated from women altogether?
Didn't go on a date, didn't kiss anybody, didn't hug anybody, didn't masturbate. So yeah.
Okay, wow. That's
Yeah,
interesting. I
because
didn't know that.
I feel like I mean, why say you're celebrated if you're out here playing with yourself, So yeah.
Okay. That's interesting
Yeah.
because, I mean, I guess, wow, that like kind of threw me off because I wouldn't think, because technically, I mean, if we're doing textbook definition of celibacy, it would probably just be, I mean, I'd have to look it up, but it would probably just be not engaging in like sexual intercourse with another person.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think about not doing it like with yourself, So I get how I guess that could kind of be like a distraction, like maybe like if you're getting a taste of something, it can make it harder for you to separate from it. So you were really full in, like committed to this.
Yeah.
Did you hit a point where it was kind of like it was easy for you, or was it hard the entire time, or did you hit like a threshold where you were just cruising?
Months 0 through 3 were probably the hardest. Once I got to around month 9 to a year, then it just became like, all right, this is my journey, this is my mission. Like I'll find the girl I'm supposed to be married, type of thing. That's what it became. I didn't even think about it, like, So that's where the most difficulty came, months 0 through 3. And since you are touching on this subject, crazy as it may sound, between months like 3 and 6, I went through a phase of thinking like I lost my confidence. Crazy as it may sound, right? Because sometimes, at least some people, they equate sex to confidence, and if they're not getting that, they'll feel like, man, like, dude, are these people viewing me as this? Even though I still look the same, like, went to the gym every day, I really was like low on myself.
Especially as a male.
Yeah.
There's a lot of.
And I had to overcome that, and I'm like, man, what am I thinking? Like, I don't need sex doesn't define me just because I hook up with this chick or that chick. It means nothing.
So did you have like a set amount of time that like you knew like, okay, I'm gonna set it for at least a year, or were you really committed to just whenever I find the one, that's when I'm gonna stop?
No, there was no set time. Funny you brought up that. So I lost my virginity in 2008. I was 17 going on 18 at the time. So I went on this journey of celibacy in 2019. So I said to myself, like, man, is God, if I'm willing to go how long I've had sex for, would that be like the finish line for me? So I said to myself, could I go, 11 years of celibacy? And I'm like, I don't know, but I'm willing to find out. So in my mind, I'm thinking like, well, maybe that's the suffrage I had to go through was 11 years, which is the amount of time I've been sexually active. So that's how I viewed it. But I didn't have any true set time of when it was gonna end. You know, I was willing to. I told myself, well, man, like maybe I'll go the rest of my life like this type of thing. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
so because giving myself was the reason I got to the point I'm at now. So yeah,
Okay. Interesting. All right.
yeah,
I just, very few people commit to anything like that. You know what I mean? So I guess, like, kudos to you for being able to do it as long as you did. Um, Going back, though, to why your dad was not supportive of this, I was getting to saying, that usually in a highly religious environment, they're discouraging sex before marriage. So he didn't care. Like, he wasn't like big on the no sex before marriage thing. He wanted you to be doing that, or
well, when it comes to religion, like people like to pick and choose like what they're gonna, use and not use. So
yeah.
even though the Bible really does say you should save yourself for marriage, you know, it also says don't eat pork, but people pick and choose what they want to go with. But regardless of what he was saying, it's so easy to be like, oh, my dad says it, so I'm gonna do this. Like I knew like I needed to do this for me, and no regrets.
Mm-hmm.
I've become the strongest I've ever become mentally and physically. And there's other stuff I want to touch on like that I did during my journey as well when you're ready.
Yeah,
So
I'll ask you about
yeah.
that later on. Um, okay. I'm like trying to process all this because there's a lot of things we've had conversations about this before, but I feel like I'm, kind of learning a lot about like this perspective and stuff. Okay, so you said that you were kind of like there was no set time period, but you were willing to go as long as you needed to go. So what made you? Because obviously we gave it a time frame, so it lasted for about 26 months.
Mm-hmm.
What made you decide to end that?
Well, I didn't decide to end it. Just an individual caught me at a weak point, and yeah, that's how it happened. Then the irony, that person ended up being um, my child's mother. So
The
yeah,
same person that
mm-hmm.
made you be celibate in the first place. Well,
Yeah,
not made you, but influenced your decision.
absolutely.
Um, so I guess I'm wondering, obviously this person hurt you a lot. Um, and during this time period, over 2 years, I'm assuming there was a lot of you trying to heal. Um, so would you say that, and not in terms of other things, because I'm sure we'll touch on that in a little bit about in what ways, you healed all around by being celibate. But specifically this relationship with your child's mother, um, would you say that because she was able to kind of lure you out of this stage of celibacy that you hadn't completely healed from this relationship, or was it just because the love for her was still there, or what exactly about her was able to bring you out of this stage of celibacy?
As much as I kick myself over making the decision to break my journey of celibacy with her, I think it was necessary um, because it was so much more to the story. It was almost like this closed the gap that this chapter in my life was is officially over with. So as much as I look back, what was I even thinking? I should have just, stayed at bay, kept things how they were. But like I said, I think it was necessary, and me going back, although it brought me more hurt than what the first time did, I'm here now, and once again, it added to my strength. It hardened me even more so than what I could thought, more so than I thought I could be before. So
Just kind of like the nail in the coffin, would you say?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So was there a part of you throughout this whole thing that was maybe hoping that you guys could still work it out, or that there was a chance, while you were doing all this, like maybe she'd change or maybe circumstances would change?
Absolutely. I thought she was a totally different person. It was around the holidays. Like, I get to be with my son every day. Like, so many factors. And, you would love to think people would change. And once again, I want to say I'm no victim, not pointing fingers at anyone. This is just my situation. I'm sure I did things wrong, but, it just is what it is. So,
Um, and you can say no,
okay.
but would you be willing to share like what it is exactly, like when you say you were hurt even more the second time than the first time, like what that means, like how you were hurt, or what exactly
Um,
did it for you that you were like, I'm done?
Absolutely. If you want me to go into it, because
Yeah.
this is something that we touched on the first time we spoke. So
Let's
basically,
do it. This is where we're gonna bump heads, but
all right,
let's do it.
absolutely. So yeah, so basically the first time like things went south between her and I is because of um, a relationship that you know was outside of ours with her and another person.
An infidelity.
Exactly, a sexual one.
Okay.
And this specific person is somebody I knew, and they were married themselves. And yeah, I definitely frown upon that, but to each his own. I just won't. I'm not into love triangles. So
Oh yeah.
that was the first instance. When I came back, found out they were still dealing with one another. So it was a wrap for me.
Yeah.
So that definitely think about you thinking somebody had changed just to find out they were just the same exact person, just in, better clothing or better camouflage, so to speak. So
Yeah. I mean, I'm not arguing with you there. Like,
no.
an infidelity, cheating, any sort of like betrayal in that way is, I've been on both ends of the spectrum, as you know, and as I've been very apparent about in like different episodes of my show. This, and I think I've mentioned on my show before, I know I've mentioned it to you, but this is kind of because it had affected me so much in my personal relationships. It became like a huge thing that I studied throughout school. So it was like the focus of, I have a comm degree, so a lot of comm is interpersonal communication, which obviously is directly tied to relationships. So in a lot of classes, you have like the freedom to study what you want to study, to kind of make the paper your own, as long as it was comm related. So I wrote a lot of papers on infidelity, cheating, human attraction, both sexually and emotionally, polyamory and open relationships, which is like the ability to love multiple people or be attracted to multiple people and incorporate multiple people inside of a relationship. So I learned a lot of really interesting things about human behavior and psychology when it comes to romantic relationships. Regardless of all of that, I can attest to the fact that it's super fucking painful to go through something like that. We both have like been open in saying we've both been on both ends of the spectrum. So we've transgressed and we've been the victim of a transgression. It still doesn't make it hurt less when it happens to you. There's this innate part of you that, and I'm not going to get into all the psychology about like which part of your brain is responsible for what. But there's a part of you that feels like you're short in some way. Like, what do I not have? Like, what is this other person giving you that I'm not giving you, right? And that's kind of like our natural go-to is like, that hurts because it makes me feel like I'm not enough. And that's a pretty universal experience. I don't know many people in my life who have, and it's been many people because it's a very common occurrence. I don't know many people in my life that have not been hurt by discovering an infidelity or a transgression, So there's no disagreement that that is wrong, because it's wrong to hurt other people willingly and knowingly. And that it hurts, like it's shitty all around. So I'm, on behalf of myself and anyone who's ever been cheated on, I'm sorry you had to experience that. It does build character. It definitely, makes you turn inwards, and you kind of have to give yourself like reassurance and love. And I think that there's a lot of important things that happen when you start to develop a relationship with yourself, which I'm sure we're going to touch on in a few minutes, especially when you're celibate and not thinking about other people at all romantically. One thing that I feel like maybe, I'm not actually, we might have more in common than you think regarding this topic. I have a little more of a nuanced view of it because of obviously my degree and my personal experiences. So a lot of people who have been cheated on, there's maybe like a hatred for this person that did that to them, or a hatred for anybody that has cheated on anyone ever, right? Because, you've been through it. You know what it feels like. You don't like that other people make other people feel that way because you can resonate with it, right? Um, but the one thing that, I will say that I don't think a lot of people would disagree with, but a significant number of people might disagree with, is that not everyone who cheats is a bad person. Like, it's more nuanced, it's more black and white, like most things in human behavior and psychology. It's more nuanced than just being a good person or a bad person. So just because, this is my personal belief, is just because someone cheats does not make them a horrible person. It makes them guilty of making a bad decision and hurting somebody else, right? Which we do in a lot of different ways. Like, we hurt a lot of people in a lot of different ways. This is the last thing I'll say, and then I'll let you respond. What's interesting to me about infidelity and about cheating is that it's like this really, really bad thing. Like, and because it hurts really bad, but it's this paper that I wrote. There was research that showed that people thought cheating was worse than things like that people go to prison for. I won't get into all like the specific crimes, but infidelity ranked higher than like a number of severe crimes where you do like real prison time. So that perspective is unique to me. You know what I mean? Not that people's pain isn't valid, but that there's a lot of bad things that we do that aren't chastised the way that infidelity is. If you think about the nature, and I've talked about this before on another episode, the nature of all the other relationships that we have in our life, right? We usually have multiple of every other kind of relationship in our life at once, simultaneously. So from pets, right? Like, you have a dog and a bird, right? And you might love the dog because it gives you unconditional love, and you might love the bird because it's got a quirky personality and like repeats what you say. We have two parents. We have a mom and a dad, and we love both of them the same. And one of them might be more nurturing and more compassionate, and you can talk to them, and the other one might be more tough and like, kind of keep you on your shit and make you more disciplined. They're very different, but you love them the same. Siblings, you might have a sister and a brother, and an older one and a younger one, and you love them for different reasons because one might be wiser and one might be funnier, and friends is a great one. That's the one that probably hits closest to home in terms of relationships, because you have your friends that you go out with, but you're not going to call them when you're going through shit because you know that they're not going to be very supportive or know what to say. And then you have your friends that you always go to, but they might not be great to have a drink with because they're kind of boring, but they're really great friends. In every other relationship in our life, we don't expect one person to meet all of our needs, and we don't bat an eye at having multiple of them because they're like, oh no, yeah, it's possible to love them equally. But in romantic relationships, that's not allowed. That's ranked higher than like federal crimes. So that's the part of this that is interesting to me. I'm not saying that anything is wrong or right, but from like a psychology perspective, you kind of look at that as like this social phenomenon that's like, why is that happening? Why is that one like so bad and so intense? You know what I mean? I want to hear your thoughts.
Well, I believe it's so intense because once you dig deeper into it, like sometimes when this act is committed, it's ripping apart families. People are getting killed over things like this. When you really pull back the layers, look at how many people are in prison right now from retaliating on somebody that had sex with their wife. Exactly. Yeah. That's a real thing. My situation, if you really want to dig deep on me, like, how would you feel if I told you that because of this, like, I walked out of my son's life because I'm not going to do it with his mom just because of how she was maneuvering. So her act to go and do whatever she did took her child's father out of his life. And people can say like, oh, like, well, that would be selfish on your part. How would it? If I would have done the same thing and she decided to walk away, then what is society going to say about her?
I think that they would say the same thing because I do.
Which is fine. But I'm just saying, like, if that was her decision, that would be her decision. That's the point I'm trying to make. Mm-hmm. And her reasoning could be like, oh, well, your dad cheated on me, and we can't be a family, so he can have you. So it's a lot of repercussions behind these things. I mean, from the littlest of consequences to, like I said, somebody losing their life. And just to piggyback on what you're saying, I agree. I don't believe just because somebody cheats doesn't necessarily make them a bad person. However, depending on the circumstances, if like that could make you a bad person.
Yeah, but there are bad people
Yeah.
that are just shitty that cheat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was just making the point that, that's not the only thing that makes someone a bad person.
Absolutely. I would agree with you on that.
Yeah.
I mean, like I told you behind closed doors, like I have cheated in the past. So like I said, I'm no victim. So I definitely don't think it makes you a bad person if you cheat. However, I would advise anyone to learn from it. If they are the one dishing it out or the one taking it. So.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it usually, I feel like stuff like that comes full circle. So, I mean, I just recently, like today, I posted this poll on my Instagram, on my podcast Instagram about, without telling me why have you been, or without telling me how have you been affected by an infidelity in like your relationship, whether it's your parents, divorce because of an infidelity, you cheated on somebody, you've been cheated on, and like there's very, very few people that have said no. So I think that usually, this is just like a personal opinion, this isn't rooted in data or anything, but people experience multiple sides of this issue. I do want to get back to you and your celibacy experience, but if anyone really is interested in infidelity and all the different sides of it and how complicated it can get and the different reasons why people do it and how it's possible for people to cheat and still want to be in their main relationship, or like all these different perspectives, it's really a good perspective. None of it is justifying it, but it's just kind of like an objective third party view on the issue. There's this book by Esther Perel. She studied infidelity and cheating for like over 20 years, and it's called The State of Affairs. And it basically, the whole book is breaking down every angle of infidelity: emotional, sexual, the other woman or other man, whether you're married or single, if there's multiple like infidelities and transgressions. It's a really informative book, and it gives you lots of perspective. So for anyone who's open to it, highly recommend it. It's a book that totally changed my perspective on relationships and life. Is there anything you want to add about that before I ask you this next question?
No, but I think you basically answered your own question. You said you took a poll today about, how has infidelity affected you? Like, just think of the ramifications behind it depending on what level you're at with it. Like, who knows? I could have not had my dad because of it. My dad could have been killed. My mom could have been killed over it, or anybody. Like, it's just so many different consequences behind it. And, I mean, it definitely holds weight in our society. You never know how somebody's going to react. You never know how somebody's going to take it. So,
for sure. I don't disagree with you there. So kind of circling back to your experience with celibacy, so I'm assuming, it's pretty obvious, but you're still attracted to women during the time that you were celibate.
Oh yeah.
So how did you kind of like hold yourself back from engaging with them? Is there like a rule that like you can't even flirt, otherwise it's going to get out of control? Did you have to like deny women that were attracted to you? Like, what did that look like?
Like you asked me, like, was it difficult at first? At first it was difficult, but as time went on, once again, like, I became stronger with it. So I could flirt with a girl if I wanted to, and it wouldn't matter, because I'm like, well, I'm not leaving with this girl, so I mean, definitely not about to kiss her. So yeah, it came like that because I'm on my mission, So
did you ever like find yourself in a position where you were attracted to a woman that you also had to like deny and be like you're nice or you're pretty or I really like you, but like I'm like taking some time to myself? Or did you not even let yourself get to that point?
I didn't even let myself get to that point. I kept most things at bay, and the little flirting, it was just like some little sweet nothings in passing. So
how did your place of work play a role in your celibacy? Like, did it make it more difficult working in an environment where, you have to talk to women, you have to pull women into the club, and they're usually like attractive women or working around like cocktail waitresses who are technically like in a model position? Do you feel like that that made it more challenging for you to be around beautiful women?
No, if anything, it gave me more confidence because at the end of the day, like, I don't care what she's thinking in her head. I'm not trying to sleep with her. So, like, it's almost like I can go up to anybody. I don't care what she thinks I'm trying to do. But listen, you could be naked right now. Like, it doesn't matter. Like,
But it didn't make, like, temptation any
no.
harder for you.
Mm-mm.
So it's basically like you hit a certain point where you were, like, in monk mode and you were like, there's
Oh, yeah.
nothing that can veer me
Like,
off this.
a year and 3 months or like a year and a half, it definitely, like, you're pretty much.
That's awesome. I
Yeah.
mean, it's hard for me to, like, imagine. Not that, like, because I engage in periods of celibacy just naturally, like I'm sure most people do. That's the second question that I asked on my story today. I haven't looked at that one, but, have you been celibate for an extended period of time? Or would you be celibate for an extended period of time? I can't think, just because I haven't, like, been in a position where this is something that has interested me, you know what I mean, or felt like I needed to do. But I can't, like, imagine, like, committing and being like, okay, I'm just not gonna have sex at all for X amount of time. You know what I mean? Um, but, like, I have engaged in, like, just periods naturally where you're just not feeling it as much. You know what I mean? You're just kind of like, yeah, like, it's just like me right now. Like, I'm just doing my own thing, and I'm focused on me. And sometimes, like, or you're, like, tired emotionally. You know what I mean? Which I'm sure was, like, a part of what influenced you to engage in this to begin with. Is sometimes you're just like, I can't afford to get hurt again right now.
That's where it started, from a place like that.
Yeah. So that's what I was gonna ask you. And when I ask you this, I want you to kind of place yourself back in the headspace you were in that year that you made that decision. So maybe, like, right after you got hurt, right after you find everything out, and you're starting to, like, play with this idea of celibacy, just like how you felt in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Not right now in retrospect, but then. Would you say that this was a choice you made out of, like, a positive mindset, rooted in your own desire for self-improvement and to focus on yourself and getting yourself right? Or was it more like of a decision from, like, a place of hurt and a negative mindset, maybe feeling like there was no other way because you felt hurt by women in general, or maybe, like, a little bit of both? Or kind of what was that rooted in? We mentioned that it was from I can't get hurt again, but what else?
Okay. Well, to answer your question, they say insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So in my 20s, the pattern, it was there. It was me going after a woman, thinking it was real, things fall apart. I basically pissed away my 20s. So when I was 29 and I had my son, I knew then, like, okay, like, I looked myself in the mirror, like, I'm about to be 30 years old now. Like, what do I have to show for all of my 20s? No real growth, no real progress. Something has to change. And you can sit back and point as many fingers as you want, but until you decide to make a change, or to at least attempt to make a change, then your life is going to stay the same. And I would have been here 10 years from now, probably not sitting across from you, but still like, man, I pissed my 30s away as well. And I knew that wasn't going to be me. So whether celibacy was going to change me for the better or not, like, I knew it had to start somewhere. Where was I going to get more discipline at? All right, well, let's pick the one thing that has basically, like, been the reason for all my failures and shortcomings for the majority of my life, as an adult at least. So I knew celibacy, it was a non-negotiable. I needed to embark on this, and I needed to basically stop the bleeding, so to speak. I know we spoke about soul ties. I don't know if you want to,
Whatever you want, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to go down that path, but I believe, like, when you have sex with somebody, you do make soul ties, and I believe you can take on things from that person and you give certain things away. And I feel like I've given myself to the wrong people, and who knows, maybe certain people think that they took bad things from me. But I knew I had to stop the bleeding, and that's something that I definitely did. And I think right now I'm back on the journey again. So,
yeah,
it.
Well, that's why when you say I mean, obviously my opinion doesn't really matter much, but I just want to give you, like, a different perspective. I don't when you describe what you just described to me, I don't feel like you pissed away your 20s. You know what I mean? Maybe you had to piss away your 20s to get to where you are today. It's all a part of the journey for me. So, even though you may not be fond of what you experienced in your 20s, it probably added things to you that you needed to have to get to where you are today. That's why, when we had our prior conversation the other day, if you asked me there's anything I regret, not really, because I do think that, unfortunately, the human experience is rooted in mistakes and in suffering, and that's a part of your path to learning and growing. And I've touched on this a million times in so many different episodes because spirituality always gets looped into everything with me. But I don't understand why it is this way. That's bigger than any of us, is how I feel, is why we have to go through shit to grow through shit. You know what I mean? I wish that it wasn't like that, but I do think that that's what the cards we've been dealt. And it's rooted in fucking up and learning from it. So I wouldn't say that anything that you've done is like a waste. That's why when people talk to me about relationships and about like relationships gone bad and, oh, like I just wasted 2 years with you, or I wasted 3 or however long, like I wasted my whole life with you. I don't think it's a waste. Like I think that was in your cards. Like there's something that happened there that you're supposed to take with you. You know what I mean? They either taught you, I mean both. They taught you what you do like and what you don't like, what you're willing to tolerate and not willing to tolerate, what doesn't feel good and what does feel good. And a lot of those things, those lessons don't come without experience. There's only so much your parents can do to be like, this is good, this is bad, treat others how you want to be treated. Sometimes you just got to go through it to learn like really what they mean. And it's probably made you like a better partner, a better father, going through these relationships that taught you what's okay and what's not okay. You know what I mean? Like, don't you feel like there's a part of your 20s that like you could take something from at least?
Absolutely, it's part of the journey. I guess when I give you that answer, it's the mature version of me looking back on it and saying I pissed away my 20s, as if like a parent was saying like, oh, you're pissed away your 20s. Like that's how I'm looking back on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, of course, certain experiences molded me into who I am today. It led me
Mm-hmm.
to where I am now. You know.
How did your relationship with your boy change during this time? Like, did being celibate help you focus on being a better parent? Are you guys closer or not as close? Like, what is, if you don't mind sharing, what does that look like for you now?
Oh, with my son,
Yeah.
it has made it stronger, if anything, because I'm almost looking at it as like from a parenting standpoint. Like this is how I'm doing this to be a better parent. Like I feel like being celibate is the most um, unselfish acts you can do, especially when it comes behind the decision to have a child. Like I told you, like having a kid that was like the ultimate like thing like that led me to this decision. Like I have an actual human being now that I have to look after. So the way I raise him, absolutely, is extremely militant. So yes, absolutely, it helped our relationship be better in my point of view.
When you say militant, what do you mean?
Because I want because I don't want him to make the same mistakes that I made, and I feel like I know what I should do to help him like not go down the same paths that I did. Like so that's how I'm gonna raise him. I don't want him to have to be homeless, or I don't want him to have to suffer a heartache here, or to blow away this amount of money thinking that this was a good idea. So, like, I want him to be, as funny as it may sound, like, I want him to be the version of myself that I long to be, or that I did long to be. And I feel like, even though he will be his own individual, like, I'm going to give him all the tools that he can to have all of the extra things that I didn't have. So,
Yeah.
that's how I look at it.
And obviously, like, not having women, and because romantic relationships really are, as you hit adulthood, those I feel like are the relationships that kind of take the most energy out of you, not necessarily in a bad way, because they recharge you at the same time, but they just require a lot of attention in ways that like friendships and brother-sister relationships just don't when you're an adult. Obviously, like parental relationships, like your relationship with your mom and dad carries on throughout life. And I do think that those ones are probably, I don't know, I guess it would depend on each individual person, but your relationship with your parents and your relationship like with significant others are some of like the most formative experiences in your life. So when you're taking away that other one, the romantic one, it really gives you the space to just focus on being a good dad. You know what I mean? So on that note, what was the biggest thing that you took away from this whole experience? I mean, you can touch on anything if it's with, and I'm sure it's multiple things, but if it's with, you know, your son, if it's with women, if it's with like your relationship with yourself or your family or other people, like what are some of the ways that you healed during this time?
Um, it really just was time and being able to reflect without the blinders being on. Like, I feel sex blinds us in so many ways. I mean, which is why, speaking back on red flags, sex will make you overlook a red flag. Sex will make you forget that this person is going back to be their boyfriend or their husband or whatever. Like, so being celibate for so long, or anything for so long, the beauty of it is the more you like withhold yourself from something, you'll start to see it as that thing as a weakness. So I started to view sex as like, well, I don't need sex. Like, I want to be stronger. How do you become stronger? Continue going without sex. One thing that I was gonna mention earlier, while I was being celibate, I went on probably one of the most strictest diets anybody's ever went on, and I attribute that to the fact that I already was being celibate. So for 6 months out of the 26 months, I basically took away bread, cheese, basically all sugar, even mostly fruit. I think at one point I cut out all fruit as well. And basically eating clean every day for 6 months, going to the gym 5 to 6 days a week, not missing. And I don't believe I would be able to do that had I not been celibate, because I believe if you can control your region down there, you can control any aspect of your life. I strongly believe that. And I would urge any man to try to go on this journey. I'm not saying you got to go as extreme as I did, because I'm a very extreme person, as you probably have realized in this conversation. But I would say go a month, go 9 months. See if you can go 9 months or go like 8 weeks, and then just tell me how you feel. I've actually inspired other friends to try this, and like, man, Russ, like this is the strongest I've ever been in the gym. Like, this is a real thing, and they're gonna try to go for even longer now. Like, it's a real thing. Like, I feel as men, that is our strength, being able to control our sexual desires, and that the irony that is one of our biggest weaknesses as men, being able to control our sexual desires, and that's
Yeah.
what my journey basically allowed me to keep at bay. And I feel like I cracked the code. I'm nowhere near a finished product, but I think I cracked that code as far as like maneuvering my way through life as a man is controlling my sexual desires. Everything else will fall in place. So.
Yeah. I think what you're talking about, like the idea you're touching on, is even bigger than just, sex. It has to do, so like in our brains, we have the animal part of our brain, which, why is it? The limbic system. I feel like it's slipping my mind. I've talked about this so many times. And yeah, limbic system, which is like the animal part of your brain. It's like the impulse and the like that feeling you get when you're addicted to something, like you need it. It's really strong. The prefrontal cortex is like the part of your brain that like tries to, and I'm not like a psych person, so these could be, off. I know the idea is there, but the actual names of this could be off a little bit. But that prefrontal cortex, that part of your brain tries to balance that out and control it with like logic and reason, but it's just not, it doesn't even compare in strength. There's this book by Jonathan Haidt, one of my favorite authors, called The Happiness Hypothesis. And the cover of the book is like this guy riding an elephant. And that's the metaphor that they give for your brain, is the limbic system's the elephant and the prefrontal cortex is the rider. It's a very common metaphor, like the rider and the elephant. And it's basically like this animal, right, this limbic part of your brain could go haywire any minute, and you're not going to have any fucking control over it as like a human, because it's an elephant. It's just way stronger than you, way more powerful than you. But if you can develop like these certain techniques and this certain relationship with the elephant, you can like have a synchronous relationship with it. You can ride it, you can train it. It's always going to be stronger than you. You're never going to be stronger than it, but you can get it under control. And there's so many different like spiritual, I mean, just about every religion is kind of rooted in this idea, but specifically like I know Buddhism is rooted in this idea of non-attachment. Hinduism a little bit too, where it's basically like the root of our suffering is in our attachment to things, to people, to ideas and concepts, to identities. It's the ego. You know, it's this feeling like I need to own, I need to conquer, I need to be this or I need to be that. And non-attachment is kind of just throwing your hands up and saying like things are going to come and go, but I will stay the same. Like I am okay, I am at peace, no matter what passes my path. And that's enlightenment, right? And it's like being separated from anything that can like stir you. It's a huge goal of mine as a person to get to the point where, for example, I guess in any way, whether it's like my physical appearance or my podcast or someone saying something about my personality, I'd love to get to the point where a positive, like a compliment, stirs me in the same way as a negative comment does. So it's like neither one of them like get me wired up. You know what I mean? Because that, if you get like super stirred up by someone saying something to you, your ego's engaging, right? But if you have someone coming up to you and it doesn't matter what they say because you know what's good and what's right in you, that's like enlightenment. You know what I mean? Like I know my shit's good. So if someone comes up to me and says, "Hey, I like your shit," I'm like, "Yeah, it's good. Thank you. I appreciate that." Like it's not narcissistic. It's just like you obviously it's nice to hear, it's flattering. But you're kind of like, "Yeah, I know because I put a lot of work into it and that's who I am as a person." And then someone else can come up to you and say like, "I don't like your shit. I think it's trash." And it's like, "Well, you're wrong." So, or I don't care. You know? So that's like the true goal, you know, and I feel like you're taking steps to get there. Like you had a taste of what it's like to be separated from the things that control so many other people. Yeah. Would you say that's fair?
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would definitely agree.
You might really like Buddhism, actually. If you're like big into that, you should read some of the like the old like books and philosophies on it and stuff. It's really interesting. So do you feel like you've healed enough from this experience to participate in a healthy relationship now, or do you feel like there still might be some baggage that you could possibly bring into, you know, your next relationship?
Well, like everybody else, I'm still a work in progress. But in time, I'm sure I'll be ready. I mean, right now, I want to be able to give myself fully to whoever I do decide to date seriously, whenever that may be. So, I mean, I'm sure I'm healed for the most part, but I just want to make sure, you know, whenever I do decide to, you know, go back down that road again as far as relationship goes. So I'm just being patient right now. I just turned 32 yesterday, so no rush.
Happy belated.
Thank you. No rush. I'm still young. You know, best ever looked, best ever felt. So no rush at all. So
Are you still celibate right now?
right now I am. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right now I am.
Is it like as strict as you were? It's just kind of more like, because I know you broke your period of celibacy for that woman. Did you just like go back to it after that and you were like, "Oh, I'm back to like being celibate," or have you allowed yourself to participate in like
No,
casual?
I was rocking out with her. We were trying to work things out. For like 2 months or so, we were trying to work things out, and then, you know, once again, how I said, like, it gave you clarity, like, just something just didn't feel right with me, and my intuition was right. You know, I got the closure and all the evidence I needed, and moved on. So.
But
yeah.
after that, you didn't entertain any other women.
I did entertain one, but I had known her for years actually, and she doesn't live in this country, and we met up. So yeah.
Okay. So you're kind of still on this adventure of like, I'm just gonna stay celibate until there's someone that really like catches my eye or really like I feel serious about.
Yeah, so I think that was 60 days ago. So yeah, I'm already back. You see, I'm already back to 60 days, not even thinking about it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure when I look up, I'll be, who knows where I'll be. But yeah.
So lastly, what would be your advice to anyone considering engaging in a period of celibacy?
I would say attack it with an open mind and don't look at it as a finish line, so to speak. Just do it and see how long you can go and then stop and then try again. I would say for any male, because obviously I can only speak for men, I would say at least give it a month, 1 to 3 months to really, before you pass judgment on it. As for me, it changed my life in ways I can't even express. And I'm thankful for the journey. And as I just mentioned, I'm already starting it over again because I believe in it, and I believe that we should value ourselves more as men and as individuals just by giving ourselves. Although sex is natural, I believe we should covet it more than what society currently views it as. That would be my take on it now. Like I mentioned, it made me the strongest I've ever been in the gym, mentally, even emotionally. Like some of the things I've been able to withstand because of it. And like I said, it brought things full circle for me to break my streak with the person that was the last person I encountered. And for me to learn the lesson that I learned, like it couldn't have happened any other way. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Is there anything else that you want to add before we go?
No, I definitely appreciate the time being on such a great show. I know I'm going to look back on this years from now, and you're going to have millions and millions of followers and views, and, you're going to be up there.
You'll be one of the OGs.
Hey, maybe I'll be invited back again, and I'll talk about doing 5 years on this. So.
Let's do it. Well, thank you, Russell. That's all I have for you today. Thank you for, being my first guest of the season and sharing everything like so openly and honestly and authentically. I know it was a very personal and like troublesome experience for you. So thank you again. If you guys have any questions or want to continue the conversation with Russell, I'll have his contact information available for you to do so. Thank you all for tuning in. My next episode will be out in 2 weeks, and I am looking forward to the rest of the season with all of you.